Alright, today we'll create one Red Hat virtual machine where we'll be installing SQL Server. That is, Red Hat is a Linux instance virtual machine where we'll be installing SQL Server. Let's look at the agenda for today. First step is to create Red Hat virtual machine. So let's begin with this. We'll be creating the entire architecture straight from the scratch. That is, even if you have like little knowledge about it, you can straight away follow this tutorial. So I've already logged in to the Azure portal. This time we won't be creating the virtual machine using this interface. Instead, we'll be using the Cloud Shell, which is in the upper right and almost corner in the center. Next, we'll be using Bash. Let's select Bash. We'll select no storage account. Let's choose one subscription and click on apply. So it's requesting the Cloud Shell. I have the commands ready here. So let me explain you what are the steps required to create the virtual machine. So I have named the Red Hat first, then we need to replace the resource group name, right? So let's first browse or duplicate this tab maybe, and let's find out our resource group name because we need to substitute it in the command. Let's open resource group. We have this number. Let's copy and paste this here. Next, if you look, we have the username. This is our username and one password. This is a password. Please keep the password safely because as a database administrator, you need to keep this as a secret. Then we have the image. And then we have since we'll be doing SSH, we have put this, and next is the size of the virtual machine. So we'll be using standard B2S. If you have done the hands-on for the first part, we have created everything like from the portal, but this time we'll be running the commands. Let's copy this thing and let's try to run. We'll close this because we already have noted the resource group. So let's press enter and check whether like it creates. Okay, we are beginning. It's giving considering security these things, right? So it's somewhat is creating. Let's wait for, yeah, it's, see, it shows running, right? Looks good to us. So meanwhile, I'll duplicate this tab because I know one virtual machine will be getting created on the back end, and we need to check the virtual machine once created. So if you look at the next step for the agenda, here we have next we need to configure the SQL Server. So this is getting created. Next will be to create the SQL Server. If you look at the architecture diagram as well, we have this Red Hat virtual machine which is residing in the resource group. As mentioned in the command, we have pasted the resource group name here. So that's what the architecture diagram also depicts. Next are the steps for the SQL Server, right? So let's check it out. What's the progress? All right, our virtual machine is created. How do we know? Because just by looking at this, and we got one public IP address. This will be need because let me open and show you what happened in the backend. If you look, since we have triggered the command, it creates one Red Hat server virtual machine, and it's having the public IP address. Just note this public IP address, it should match with this one. Is it matching? Yes, absolutely it's matching. So let's copy this IP address because we'll be needing it in the steps it's mentioned. Note this IP address because we need it to SSH into the VM, right? Because in order to install SQL Server, first we need to SSH. So let's remove the space. So this looks good. SSH, this is the username, right? If you look here, username is a Red Hat admin. So the command goes SSH username at the rate of public IP address. So let's now copy and try to SSH into the VM. We'll close this window for now because we don't need it anymore. Let's paste this command, hit enter. Yes, we are successfully able to SSH. Now we need to enter the password. So password we have already set up, like this one is our password. I'll type it manually. Please keep it as secret as a database administrator. For this demo, I'm showing this to you because unless I show you, you won't be able to know the exact step. So let me type the password. So yeah, we are successfully in. The password is accepted now. Let's check the next step. Next is the command to install SQL Server package. I have already done the homework for you to explain what the command does. So I'm just copy pasting these things. Let's go back to the portal, paste it. Yep, this one is done. Now let's go back once again. Next is the command to install the SQL Server. So sudo yum install. This is a very classic command if you're already familiar about Linux, right? Let's fire this command. So this might take a bit to install. Till then, let's copy paste the next command. Next command is the configuring a SQL Server and specifying the edition. So this is one of the important steps. Let's copy and wait till the SQL Server gets installed. Alright, this is complete. So let's fire our next command, this one. So we need to mention one edition. Let's type edition 1 and hit enter. Next it will ask for to accept the license and terms. Again, administrator password is required. So let's give the password and hit enter. Again, it's asking for password for confirmation. Let's type the same password. Our password is accepted. It's configuring the SQL Server. Let's wait for a while. Alright, it's done. SQL Server is now starting its mention. Setup is successfully completed. Let's continue with the next command. Next command is to check whether SQL Server is running or not. Since we got the message, if you look, that SQL Server is completed successfully, we need to check whether it's running because it says now starting, right? Let's use the systemctl command. It's a classic command to check. If we look here, it shows running. So we are good for now. SQL Server is up and running. Now next we need to download Microsoft Server tools for the repo config file. I'll copy and again paste in the Cloud Shell and hit enter. Looks good to me. Now we need to install the SQL Server command line tools. This is essential, right? Let's go ahead and paste this thing. So this tutorial is more about the commands. Like in the backend we need to type yes. In the Windows it's like click of a button, but in Linux we need to fire the command. It says complete. Now next will be to add the environmental path variables. Let's copy and paste this thing. This looks good to me. Now let's fire this command here. Let's copy. P is the after P, if you look at it, is the password basically within single quotation mark. So let's run this. Alright, we are good. It shows 1. It means no error. If you got the error, I have already done my homework. You can have a look at this. It will be available for diamond members and above, the entire file. Since we are good, now we should be creating one database. Try to create one database probably because in the architecture diagram, if you look, we are done with the SQL Server installing. Now is the time for the database creation, right? That is our step 3. We are done with step 1 and 2. Step 3 is the next. So let's copy paste this. This is a basic SQL command, create database, then the database name. So our database name will be Cloud Guru Amit in a nutshell. Let's copy and paste this thing, hit enter. Then we need to type go. Just note, we generally semicolon that works, but here in Linux generally go is the command. So this looks good because if you check the numbering from 1 to 2, then again it return 1, it means it is accepted. So our next step will be to verify whether this Cloud Guru Amit database is created or not. So we'll be using one simple statement, select statement. Let's fire this command and check whether our database got created or not. Yes, if we look here, database ID, that is our database, is displayed, Cloud Guru Amit. So we are good. If we look at the steps or the agenda, we are done with 1, 2 and 3. Now next step will be to create the basically the table, because our table will reside inside a database, right? So we are done with the database. Now next step or the last step will be to create one table. So we are good. Let's use the command. The problem with Linux is sometimes that it will take only a single line. So we need to copy paste one by one. So still let's try. I know it takes one line at a time. See, use Cloud Guru Amit. So it took just the one line. I'll similarly copy paste line by line. So we need a bit of patience. while using Linux, right? And we need to be careful not to miss the commas and all, otherwise there will be a syntax error. I think is something wrong. No. Employee ID, primary key looks good. There is a space though, but shouldn't matter. Copy, then paste. It's all about copy and paste this time. Let's paste it. Next type go. So change context to database Cloud Guru Amit. This looks good. So let's check whether our table got created or not by firing one simple select star from the table name. We have created the table name as employee. Here if we look, the name is employee, right? So select star from employee is basically should be technically the blank table, right? So let's type go and check. Yeah, this is the blank table, right? There is no data. We have just created the structure of the table like employee ID, employee name, employee salary. So these three columns are there. So we are good. No records because we haven't inserted anything. So this looks good from the tutorial point of view because we have created one table. We are almost done with everything. If you look at the architecture diagram straight from the beginning, so we have used the portal, we have created the VM using the commands inside the resource group, we have configured SQL Server, created database and created one table as well. So this concludes this tutorial. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. Alrighty, so let's tackle our first question. Always mark the keyword as it will help you to arrive at the correct answer quickly and save time. So let's first look at option A, C and D. A says Azure Event Hubs, C says Azure SQL Database and D says Azure Blob Storage Container. So if we look at these three options cannot query matrix using Custo query language, also known as KQL. That's why these three are out. We are left out with log analytics. So Azure Log Analytics is designed for monitoring and querying matrix using Custo query language. That being said, option B looks good. And if you look at the official documentation, it's mentioned if you already know how to use or how to query in KQL, but need to quickly create useful queries based on resource types, see the saved example queries pane in use queries in Azure Monitor Log Analytics. So that's what we require. We'll lock option B as the right answer. All right, now, so we have a classic database question where we need to configure mixed mode authentication. So let's look at option A. It says SP add remote login. SP add remote login stored procedure, as the name suggests, SP means stored procedure, adds a remote login to SQL Server but does not configure authentication modes what we require as per the question. So A is out. Let's move to option B. B says XP underscore instance underscore reg write. So XP instance reg write extended stored procedure can be used to modify the Windows registry, allowing us to change authentication mode of SQL Server. Let's park this. Let's move to option C. C says SP underscore change underscore users login. So SP change users login is used to resolve issues with orphaned user. That's not what we require as per the question. Let's remove this. We'll move to option D. D says XP underscore grant underscore login. So XP grant login, again extended procedure, grants access to SQL Server for a specified login, but it does not configure authentication modes. So D is out. We'll lock option B as the right answer. Alright, so this question will test your concepts on T-SQL, also known as Transact SQL. So we need to change the password for private key. Let's look at option A. So if you look at option A only decrypts the private key but does not set a new password what we require as per the question. So A is out. Let's move to option B. If you look at option B, this option only encrypts the private key with new password but does not decrypt it first. That's why it's wrong choice. Now let's move to C. If you look at option C, this option decrypts the private key with the current password and then encrypts it with a new password. Let's park this. We'll move to D. If you look at option D, this option involves specifying a file path which is not required for changing password. If you look here, it is like a kind of path mentioned here. We don't require this, so let's remove this. We'll lock option C as the right answer. All right, so we got a coding question. We got to read the select query and understand what it does. So as a database administrator, we need to be thorough about queries as well, right? So let's tackle question or option A. A says allocated space. So if we read the question, allocated space column represents the total allocated space for the file, not the free space what we are looking for. So A is out. Let's move to B. B says use space. So use space column, as the name mentions, if we read the code, space used and use space. So this again represents the space that is currently used within the file, not the free space. Therefore wrong choice. We are left out with option C, that is free space. Free space column is calculated by subtracting the use space from the allocated space, representing the free space available in each file. So that being said, option C looks good. We'll lock option C as the right answer. All right. So this is interesting because we need to restore database backups across different geographical regions. So this is interesting. As a DBA, disaster recovery, we should be familiar about. Let's look at option A. A says locally redundant storage. So locally redundant storage, also known as LRS, represents or LRS replicates data within a single region. As the name suggests, locally, right? So it will replicate data within a just single region, not across geographical regions what we require. So A is out. Let's move to option B. B says zone redundant storage. So zone redundant storage, or ZRS, replicates data across multiple zones. As the name suggests, multiple zones within a single region. Again, it cannot, or ZRS cannot replicate data across regions what we require as per the question. So B is out. Let's move to C. C says geo zone redundant storage, GZRS. So geo zone redundant storage replicates data across multiple zones, as zone is here, so multiple zones within a single region, and provides some level of regional redundancy, but it is not the standard for cross regional backups what we require. Let's reject this. Let's move to D. D says geo redundant storage, GRS. Geo redundant storage replicates, as the name says, geo means entire geography, right? So geo redundant storage replicates data to paired region, ensuring data is available in another region in case of a regional outage, making it ideal for cross region backup restoration. That being said, option D is the right answer. And if you look at the official documentation, it's mentioned GRS copies your data synchronously 3 times within a single physical location in the primary region using LRS, then copies your data synchronously to a single physical location in a secondary region that is hundreds of miles away from the primary region. So here is the diagrammatic representation. So here is the one region, and there is the another region which is known as secondary region. So how it replicates the data. So if you can read more about it for more information. In the interest of time, we'll lock option D as the right answer. Let's bring the hay to the snow. So this question will test your concepts on disaster recovery testing in an isolated environment. What should we do? So we got 3 requirements as per the question, and we got to choose an option which meets all these 3 requirements. Cannot leave any one of them. Let's look at option A, B and D together. A says active geo replication, B says auto failover groups, and D says failover cluster instance. So if you look at all these 3, this does not support, or these do not support the main thing, that is the isolated disaster recovery testing what is mentioned here in the question, that is point number 2 criteria. So these 3 are out. We are only left out with Azure Site Recovery. So Site Recovery allows for disaster recovery testing in an isolated environment, ensuring The system is operational within 15 minutes and also minimizes the administrative overhead. Since it meets all these points 1, 2 and 3, if we look at the official documentation, it's recommended. We recommend that for test failover, you choose a network that's isolated from the production recovery site network specific in the compute and network settings in each virtual machine. That's what we require. We'll lock option C as the right answer. All right now, so we got interesting question this time, and this is about maximum in transit time. Let's look at option A and C together. A says availability group, C says failover policy. Availability group and failover policy does not control the in transit time during failover. Therefore, these two are out. Let's move to B. B says secondary managed instance. Secondary managed instance provides a target for failover, which is good. But the problem is secondary managed instance does not control the in transit time again. So B is also out. We are left out with option D, that is grace period. Grace period allows us to configure the maximum in transit time before an automatic failover occurs, ensuring that the failover process adheres to desired time constraints. That being said, D is the right answer. We'll log this. All right now, so again we got a question which should fulfill the requirements. We got to read point 1 and 2 so as to arrive at the correct answer. Let's first look at option A. It says Azure Site Recovery. Azure Site Recovery cannot minimize the recovery time for single database. That's why this is out. Let's move to B. B says active geo replication. Active geo replication provides geo replication for individual database, but involves more administrative effort than auto failover groups, which is option C. Since option C is better than option B for now, we will reject option B straight away. Let's now move to C. C says auto failover groups. Auto failover groups allows for automatic failover with minimal administrative effort or administrative overhead and ensures quick recovery of database. Looks good. We'll park this. Let's move to option D. D says Azure Backup. Azure Backup is used for backing up data, but cannot minimize recovery time, what we require as per the question, right? So D is out. We will lock option C as the right answer. Okay, so let's tackle this question. This is about, again, disaster recovery. So this is very, very important topic as a Azure administrator, a database administrator. We got 3 requirements. Let's look at option A first. A is database mirroring on an instance of SQL Server on Azure VM. Database mirroring on an instance of Azure SQL Server on Azure virtual machines involves higher administrative effort. That's why option A is wrong. Let's move to B. B says availability groups for SQL Server on Azure VM. Availability groups for SQL Server on Azure virtual machines can be complex to manage and may not minimize cost. Therefore, B is also out. Let's move to option C. C says Azure SQL Managed Instance Link. Azure SQL Managed Instance Link does not address real-time data replication requirement, which is point number 1. Therefore, C is out. Let's move to D. D says transactional replication to an Azure SQL Managed Instance. Transactional replication to an Azure SQL Managed Instance supports real-time data replication and is also cost-effective and also minimizes administrative effort. That being said, option D is the right answer. Alrighty, so let's again tackle a question related to disaster recovery. We got 3 requirements or the objectives which should fulfill by the option, especially the correct option. Let's look at option A. A says Azure Site Recovery. Azure Site Recovery involves higher administrative effort and may not minimize the RPO and RTO for database. That is point 1, 2 as well. So this is out. Let's move to B. B says active geo replication. Active geo replication can help with the first 2 points, that is RPO and RTO, but active geo replication involves more administrative effort compared to auto failover groups, which is currently option D. Since option D is currently better than option B, for now we can reject option B. Now let's move to option C. C says ability groups. Ability groups can be complex to manage, increasing administrative effort. C is out. Let's move to D. That is the only option remaining. Auto failover groups. So auto failover groups provides automatic failover. As the name suggests, auto failover. So automatic failover with minimal administrative effort and will help minimizing both RPO and RTO, making it the most suitable choice. So we'll lock option D as the right answer. So please don't go away. Let's meet in next part of the series, which got to be more and more interesting.